with 19% tariffs on Pakistani exports to United States of America. Will this development have any negative, positive effect on Pakistani textile exports to United States?
I think we have laid down a fair amount of concessions to the United States, and we ended up getting 19%. It's a good start. The US runs probably the smallest trade deficit of all the ASEAN countries or Southeast Asian countries with Pakistan.
Within our own country, Pakistan, is textile sector is comfortable with the current policies and with the current tariffs and regimes within the Pakistan? Do you think with this existing incentives and all policy frameworks, textile sector will grow?
We have the highest policy rate in the region. And as you know, we cannot export our inflation. We can probably pass it on in the domestic market, which is slightly impervious to what's happening outside the country. But if you are going to compete in the export market, and why for the business of an American or a European importer or a brand or a retailer, you will have to compete with the cost factors.
Why it is so over last many years, we haven't seen the fresh trade policy announced, which may focus on all exports of Pakistan to different countries and continents.
So an initiative is being taken by the special advisor to the Prime Minister, Mr. Harun Akhtar Saab. He's trying to formulate an industrial policy, but then we have to realize that the cornerstone of any trade or industrial policy has to be energy rates and interest rates.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello and welcome to Program Insight in V News English. Dear viewers, Pakistan and United States finally struck a trade deal on trade tariffs. Pakistan and United States successfully concluded negotiations, and as a result of this trade deal, United States imposed on Pakistan 19% trade tariffs. In addition to this, both countries also agreed on exploring huge reserves of oil in Pakistan. So this is quite significant development. And Pakistan is a major exporter of not only textile, many other goods to United States of America, also to Europe and a number of countries. Pakistani exports, particularly textiles, are the major segment and the major share of Pakistan's earning from export sector. What impact this 19% tariff will have on Pakistani exports, particularly textile, at a time when there is a very tough regional and international competition in textile sector? And what are the domestic policies? We will discuss all aspects of Pakistan's textile sector issues, policies, frameworks, and what textile industry basically want from government in order to give more boost to textile sector. To discuss this all, we are fortunate to have with us today the All Pakistan Textile Mills Honor Association APTMA's chairman, Mr. Kamran Arshad. Very warm welcome to Program Insight in V News English. Kamran sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
The immediate, of course, and the most latest development is this trade deal between Pakistan and United States with 19% tariffs on Pakistani exports to United States of America. What is your assessment as Pakistan's top textile industry association's chief, that will this development have any negative, positive effect on Pakistani textile exports to United States?
I feel it's a very good start. We were hoping for 15 to 16%, but we ended up getting 19%, the same as Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Bangladesh ended up getting 20. So Pakistan, Thailand, and Indonesia ended up getting 19%. Japan and Turkey ended up getting 15. I feel there is still room for more negotiation and for buying our way down further on the subjected 19%. It's a good start because um, I don't know the exact rationale behind this tariff as a tariff placement as such. All I know is that the United States runs a $3 billion trade deficit with Pakistan, a $6 billion trade deficit with Bangladesh, a $48 billion trade deficit with India, a $123 billion approximate trade deficit with Vietnam, and a $296 billion trade deficit with China. With Turkey, I think it's a there's not really it's probably an almost neutral situation. And as far as Japan is concerned, that's a little surprising because I doubt they import anything substantial from the United States, whereas they export everything from Japan. So Japan being placed at 15% with a promise of a $500 billion investment over the next 5 to 8 years is what ended up getting them 15%. Pakistan, on the other hand, gave a lot of concessions. First off, we ended up buying the first oil cargo from Synergico, US. So that's number one. Number two, we have invited them to come and explore oil.
Exactly.
Supposedly, one of the world's most untapped, undiscovered, fourth or fifth largest oil reserves, supposedly, depending on seismic and geological
Exactly.
surveys. So the third thing is we are zeroing the tariff on 4,200 tariff lines into Pakistan for any American product. And the fourth thing is that we are incentivizing IT investment into Pakistan by reducing 5% tax rate on any investment in the IT infrastructure. And then last but not least, there's an open invitation to American investors in the mining and minerals arena, which is largely unexplored from Pakistan. So, I think we have laid down a fair amount of concessions to the United States, and we ended up getting 19%. It's a good start. Could have been worse, but by the sheer logic that the US runs probably the smallest trade deficit of all the ASEAN countries or Southeast Asian countries with Pakistan. So I hope for going down to 15 to 16% in the coming, if not days, then months for sure.
So, thank you so much for giving a very in-depth analysis of trade between Pakistan, United States, and Southeast Asian nations. Since textile is one of the major exports of Pakistan, in addition to sports, surgical instruments, pharmaceutical, and fertilizer, and many, many more, but textile remains on the top. So, in order to meet the regional competition that you have mentioned, Bangladeshi textile sector is very strong. Similar is Thailand, you mentioned. Similar is Sri Lanka, you mentioned, and number of other Southeast Asian nations. So within our own country, Pakistan, is textile sector is comfortable with the current policies and with the current tariffs and regimes within the Pakistan? Do you think with this existing incentives and all policy frameworks, textile sector will grow?
I think it's a good opportunity. It's a good start. And we can't blame others for our own shortcomings. I feel, number one, our energy rate is the highest in the region when you compare it with India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Cambodia. Leaving aside Cambodia, Indonesia is at 7 US cents per kilowatt hour. Sri Lanka is at 6 cents of energy. Vietnam's at 8. Bangladesh is between 9 to 10 cents. And India is between 8 to 9, depending on which area. And Pakistan varies between 12 to 16 cents. So we came down from a high of 16 and a half, 17 cents down to as low as 10. Now we have gone back.
Early this year, it was announced by Prime Minister exactly.
Yes, but now that has lapsed as of 30th June. So we touched a low of 10.25 cents. Now we are back to 12 cents. So we are hoping that the better sense prevails, and since energy is surplus in the country, so the government can fulfill a long outstanding request and want from APTMA, which is of electricity being given at a regional competitive energy tariff of 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Similarly, if you go to the policy rate or the interest rate, the official rate in Pakistan is at 11%. Then, on top of that, you add the bank spread between 1.5 to 2%, depending on customer to customer. In India, it's 5.5%. In Bangladesh, it's 10%. And in Vietnam, it's 4.5%. In Sri Lanka, it's 7.75. And in Indonesia, it's 5.25. So even there, we are at a slight disadvantage that we have the highest policy rate in the region. And as you know, we cannot export our inflation. We can probably pass it on in the domestic market, which is slightly impervious to what's happening outside the country. But as if you are going to compete in the export market, and why for the business of an American or a European importer or a brand or a retailer, you will have to compete with the cost factors of these competing nations whose policy rates and whose electricity rates I just mentioned to you. So we have some homework to do on that front. Unfortunately, we are in a very fiscally tight IMF program that commenced in September 2024. It was a $7 billion program. We've already drawn down 2 billion. The remaining 5 billion are to be dispersed over the next 24 to 26 months. And there is very little leeway that the government has. But at the same time, our government needs to adjust its own priorities and focus on industrialization and industrializing the country, first in enhancing exports and second in reducing imports. Whatever is being imported needs to be produced domestically so as to reduce the trade deficit that we run.
So, at a time when, other than wheat and sugar, Pakistan is a top cotton producing country, but despite over last many years, there have been a bumper cotton crop in Pakistan, but still Pakistan is importing cotton from abroad, particularly from United States. Why it is happening so? Once a top cotton producing country is now importing cotton for textile sector in Pakistan. Why it is so?
So our last bumper crop was in the year 2013, 2014. We touched a magical figure of 14 million bales, 14 million plus. And since then, we haven't seen that magical figure ever. And our crop has been on the decline, steady decline since then.
The figure you mentioned, 14 million. 14 million,
yes,
true?
Yes, back in 2013, 2014.
10 years ago, exactly.
Approximately 11 years ago. And since then, we have been on a steady decline. And just this past year, we hit a historical low output of 5.5 million bales. And there are a couple of problems that our cotton sector faces. First, we are one of the world's 20 most affected countries by climate change. Number two, we don't have a proper regulator overseeing the sale of cotton seeds and cotton pesticides. There are a lot of substandard cotton seed companies operating in Pakistan, and it's the regulator's job, or the federal governments or the provincial governments. We as APTMA have time and again, and over the past 2 years, engaged routinely with the provincial government's agricultural department and at the federal level with the Ministry of Food and Food Security and Agriculture. And we have impressed upon them that there are more than 1,200 seed selling companies operating in Pakistan, whereas in next door India, there are only 70 to 80 seed companies, and their output is 6 times more than ours at 30 to 33 million bales approximately. And a country like Brazil only has 7 to 8 seed
Company.
companies, seed companies, and we have 1,200. And I would like to tell you that a 50-year-old ban on the import of cotton seed just got lifted with a lot of lobbying and with a lot of diplomacy and engaging with all the policy makers.
It's a
That
good
we are
move
not.
in the right direction. It's a good move, do you think?
Yeah, I believe it's the right move because cotton hybrid seed is being introduced in this country by the same company that bought rice hybrid seed, which did wonders for farmers and their incomes. So, if the right hybrid seed for cotton crop is introduced in this country, and after successful farm trials, if it's made available commercially, I think that can do wonders for our cotton crop as such.
And when this ban was lifted?
This was just lifted 3 to 4 months ago.
Hmm.
I was a 50-year-old ban.
Of course, you talked about the quality of seed and oversight authority, regulator, these all things. What are the other issues with the federal government? Any issue or your any reservation with the federal government with regard to any policy on textile sector that's hampering the textile export growth?
Interest rate, energy rate, high taxation rate. These are three issues. We're not asking for any sort of subsidy or any sort of rebate. Gone are those times. We realize we're in a very tight IMF program where such things cannot be allowed for at all. But all we are asking for is to accept our demand of regionally competitive energy tariffs, a concept APTMA introduced 7 years ago, which led to Pakistan's highest textile exports being recorded in the fiscal year 2022-2023, where our exports rose over a period of 4 years from $12.5 billion all the way up to $19.3 billion. And then in 23-24 and 24-25, they fell as low as 16.5 and 16.6 before bouncing back to $17.8 billion this year. Just within the last year, the year that closed on 30th June 2025, our total exports went from 30 billion to 32, and the lion's share in that was came from the textile sector, which added $1.2 billion to last year's export, and it increased from 16.6 up to 17.8. At the same time, our imports went slightly unchecked, and they rose from $54 billion up to $59 billion. So the gain in exports was largely wiped out by the unchecked rise in our imports, which rose by more than $5 billion or close to $5 billion, especially at a time when crude oil prices were held in check and they were traversing between $70 to $80 per barrel, and gas prices, as a consequence of being tied to crude oil prices, were also in check, and we deliveries of gas cargoes for various reasons.
So, immediate important point is the trade policy. Over the last many years, we haven't seen that trade policies properly announced by the federal government. You think so that soon after budget, there was a tradition that after 2 or 3 months after the presentation of federal budget, a federal trade policy used to be announced. Why it is so over the last many years, we haven't seen the fresh trade policy announced, which may focus on all exports of Pakistan to different countries and continents.
So, an initiative is being taken by the special advisor to the Prime Minister, Mr. Haroon Akhtar Saab. He's trying to formulate an industrial policy, but then we have to realize that the cornerstone of any trade or industrial policy has to be energy rates and interest rates. And now it's federal government, if they can prioritize enough or cut any other federal spending or any other developmental expenditure or any other unnecessary expense, and prioritize the industrial policy by giving a regionally competitive energy tariff and by reducing interest rates and bringing them down from double digits into single digit territory, especially when inflation in the country has come down substantially,
True.
around 5%. So what we learned in economics in university time was that real interest and real inflation do not vary by too much, maybe 200 to 300 basis points, but it cannot vary by that much. So if our real inflation is at 5% or below, our interest rate is more than double. So it makes no sense. And at the same time, it's a debt trap for the federal government, whereby they have to service a ballooning debt and face higher fiscal costs, higher borrowing costs. So if they bring the interest rate down, the government itself gets a lot of breathing space to prioritize industrialization and a regionally comparable industrial and trade policy based on regionally competitive energy tariff and a regionally comparable interest rate.
What are the major textile exports of Pakistan? Is this include is this include also yarn? And if it is so, what is give two things: the major textile exports, number one, and in last fiscal year 2024-25, what was the income from textile exports?
So out of the total $32 billion of exports, textile exports came in at 17.8%, $17.8 billion, which is more than 50%. It is anywhere between 55 to 59% of the total exports. Number one, out of the $17.8 billion, majority of the exports were value added products such as knitted fabrics or knitted garments, woven garments, home textile and bed linen, denim jeans, sports socks. So these were the 4 or 5 leading categories. As far as basic yarn or unfinished fabric exports are concerned, those have reduced, and those are mostly consumed domestically for addition of value or for being converted into the finished product before they are re-exported in a higher value added product, which is an encouraging sign. And we need to learn and follow Bangladesh's success story, where textile products are the only export item that they have.
Bangladesh has only major export item is textile. Another thing is, since you are from industry and keeping very strong eye on these all developments, one country you didn't mention, that is China. China is also one of the largest exporter of textile, and Pakistan-China trade, there is a major segment of textile. Pakistan also imports a lot of things. You have seen Pakistani markets flooded with different type of Chinese products, particularly different type of garments are making entry. So how you see the China factor into the textile sector in Pakistan? Is Pakistani textile industry facing any tough competition with the Chinese textile?
I think the world is changing as most recently President introduced tariffs, and the steepest of tariffs were imposed on China. So their exports into the United States are now going to become more and more difficult and challenging going forward. And most of the exports were based on fast fashion. So that trend is now changing. And we invite our Chinese colleagues and industrialists to come and invest in Pakistan and take advantage of the GSP Plus agreement that Pakistan has with Europe, and now the favorable tariff that Pakistan has from the United States compared to other countries of the world. So we are in a favorable position going forward. Yes, some more work needs to be done on reducing our energy cost, reducing our interest cost, and then slowly and steadily bringing the taxation rate down. But I think we're on the right track and the future looks bright. And just our exports for the month of July 25 came in 30 to 33% higher compared to July 24 and July 23. So that's a positive start
It's
to the
mainly
new fiscal
exports or overall?
text,
Textile.
textile export.
Textile. It increased 30%, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Mhm. Okay. So now you briefly talked about GSP plus. That has been major issue between Pakistan and European Union. So is European Union satisfied with Pakistan? This GSP plus status used to be linked with number of political conditions, number of human rights things like that. So have we met these all conditions by the European Union? Particularly, this major segment is of course textile sector. So as a APTMA chief, you think Pakistani textile sector is strictly implementing all conditions by the European Union?
At majority of the conventions that were put forth, whether it was ILO conventions, whether it's working on zero carbons going forward, whether it's reducing pollution, reducing emissions. A lot of our members have put up solar plants, solar panel installations. Some have even installed windmills where there are wind corridors and substantially reduced emissions. At the same time, there are a lot of workplace compliances that are strictly monitored, and workplace conditions are also audited by third parties before major European brands actually start their sourcing from our member mills. So, majority or most of our top exporters are 100% compliant corporate entities that follow all the necessary compliances, standards, and have all the necessary certifications related to environment, pollution, workplace conditions, fair pay, labor conditions, housing conditions, giving proper leaves. All of those things are properly monitored and enforced and audited by third parties that are appointed by the brands or the retailers, and that is why our trade with EU has surpassed our trade with the United States, because Pakistan not only follows all these conditions
Is
but
there is
also
any figure?
offered.
Is there is any figure if you have that you can share? Trade with the
Um, I know that 37% or more of our exports go to the 27 member European Union bloc of nations, and then 32 to 33% of our exports go to the United States. So just after we got the GSP plus status end 2013, early 2014, our trade with European Union enhanced drastically, and that's why we went from $12 billion all the way up to 19.3 before coming down to 16.5, 16.6, and then founding this 30th June up to 17.8. And so
This is the
far,
latest
the way,
figure. This is the latest figure, 13 billion.
no, the latest figure for this year that just finished on 30th June 2025 is 17.8.
Okay. So we are quite close to the program. I would just like to say, economic and trade analyst always says that other markets in different parts of the world should also be explored. Pakistan usually keep eye only on Europe and United States of America. So there is a huge Africa continent on which Pakistani Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other trade-related organizations used to call upon traders to explore African market, which is rising. Far Eastern region is there. So, what do you think about this? That there is a rise in Africa. There have been a number of conferences recently in Islamabad, where a lot of emphasis was made that Pakistan should explore markets for exports in Africa.
It's a good question or query that you raised. So, a lot of our exporters have hit different markets besides the European Union and the United States.
Hmm.
Some of our members are exporting in Central America, South America. A lot
Exactly.
of our members have seriously done some homework in Africa. And in Africa, the only problems they've had is the banking structure and labor, that there is not enough skilled labor over there, that there needs to be vocational training of the workforce to be done in Ethiopia and other countries, but there is room there. And then Central Asian states, that is where a lot of our exporters are also trying to focus, because the landlocked Central Asian states, incomes are rising over there due to oil prices maintaining themselves, natural gas prices maintaining themselves, increasing populations, and those Central Asian countries not having an adequate manufacturing capability as good as Pakistan's. So Pakistan, with its land connectivity via Afghanistan to the Central Asian countries, can actually do a lot. And if ever there is an issue through Afghanistan, then alternate routes can be explored from Pakistan to Turkey, and then from Turkey to Central Asian states. There is all it's a little longer, but there's a lot of charm and potential over there. Those are largely untapped markets. So we are exporting new markets. And just to give you an idea, the global textile marketplace is an $850 billion to $900 billion cake, out of which Pakistan commands a petty 2%, 1.8 to 2% at $17.8 billion. If we only get 1%, I know this is a little surprising, but if we get only 1%
of the global trade,
of the global trade, whether it's that 1% from China, or we get that 1% from Bangladesh, which probably has a global penetration around 4.5 to 5%, more like 6%, and China has the lion's share at 34%, but that share is now going to reduce. So if we just get that 1% from any other country, that can potentially mean our $17.8 billion exports rising to $28 to $32 billion, just textile exports. Textile exports. The infrastructure is there, the capacities are there, and that can change the fortune of this country. And the current IMF program that we're in is a $7 billion program, which involves a lot of fiscal tightening,
conditions, right sizing, and so many things. Exactly.
So if the government just incentivizes business conditions and the business environment, and encourages and favors industrialization in this country by reducing the policy rate, by giving the right tariff for energy, and reducing taxation within the fiscal space that they have, I believe sky is the limit for the Pakistani textile industry as far as the entire world is concerned. And just gaining
and Pakistan
that
can get rid of IMF program. True?
Yes, correct.
So we are very close to the program. Just say one sentence. What could be the ideal roadmap for export-oriented Pakistan? There is always said that exports should be enhanced. Exports should be enhanced. What is the ideal roadmap that should enhance Pakistan's export? And finally, as you said, if Pakistan is financially stable, it will get rid of IMF programs and loans.
Reducing the energy rate, reducing the interest rate, and then creating policies that favor industrialization to enhance export, creating policies that favor industrialization to reduce imports so that your trade deficit shrinks. I feel these are some of the cornerstones of any industrial or trade policy that can change the economic fortune of this country.
If the trade policy or export policy is ideal one, and it is as per in accordance with the aspirations of the industry, that's true?
Yes, if those are announced with as per the aspirations of the industry, which is nothing out of the box or unnecessary that we're asking for. We're only asking for the exact same energy rate, interest rate, and taxation rate that prevails in Bangladesh or Vietnam. That's all we're asking for. We're not asking for anything extraordinary. And then this country can do wonders, I believe.
Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Kamran Arshad, Chairman of APTMA, Pakistan's top textile body. And thank you so much for participating in our program and sharing one of the most strategic ideas and thoughts how Pakistan's export could be enhanced, particularly textile sector, and what are some of the most ideal policy guidelines that government of Pakistan could adopt and make Pakistan financially very, very stable so that Pakistan may get rid of IMF program and loans. Thank you once again. Dear viewers, till our next program, goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.